The night of July 11, 2015 seemed like any other quiet evening inside the walls of Altiplano Federal Prison. This maximum security facility, located west of Mexico City, was considered the most impenetrable fortress in the entire country. Guards monitored banks of screens showing prisoners in their cells, going about their mundane nightly routines. In cell number 20, the most notorious drug lord in the world paced back and forth. Joaquin Guzman, known to the world as El Chapo, walked toward the small shower area in the corner of his cell. A low privacy wall blocked the camera view of his lower body. He crouched down behind the wall at exactly 8:52 p.m., and he never stood back up. The guards watching the surveillance feed did not immediately react when the prisoner vanished from the screen. It was common for inmates to wash clothes or use the toilet, which was obscured by the privacy wall for modesty. Minutes ticked by in silence while the cell remained empty on the monitor. 18 minutes passed before anyone went to check on the high-value prisoner. When the guards finally arrived at the cell door and called out his name, there was no answer. They entered the small concrete room and looked behind the shower partition. The prisoner was gone. In the floor of the shower was a perfectly cut square hole leading down into a dark abyss. This disappearance marked the beginning of one of the most embarrassing episodes for the Mexican government and a legendary feat of criminal engineering. El Chapo had not just slipped away into the night. He had utilized a complex underground network that defied logic. The world would soon learn that the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel had escaped through a tunnel more than a mile long. It was equipped with lighting and ventilation, and a motorcycle on rails. The scale of the operation required millions of dollars and months of planning right under the noses of prison officials. The question on everyone's mind was how such a massive project could go unnoticed. To understand the magnitude of this escape, we must look at the man behind it. Joaquin Guzman was born into poverty in the rural mountains of Sinaloa. He earned the nickname El Chapo, or Shorty, because of his 5'6" stature. Despite his size, he possessed a ruthless ambition that propelled him to the top of the drug trade. By the early 2000s, he was the most powerful drug trafficker in the world. His cartel was responsible for shipping tons of cocaine and marijuana and heroin into the United States every year. He was more than a criminal, he was a folk hero to some, and a brutal villain to others. El Chapo was no stranger to prison breaks. In 2001, he had escaped from the Puente Grande maximum security prison in Jalisco. Legend says he was wheeled out in a laundry cart by a bribed maintenance worker. He spent 13 years on the run, growing his empire and evading capture by moving constantly through the mountains. He became a ghost who was everywhere and nowhere at once. His recapture in February 2014 was hailed as a major victory for the administration of President Enrique Pena Nieto. The government swore that this time Guzman would not escape. They placed him in Altiplano, which was believed to be escape-proof. Altiplano prison was a concrete beast designed to hold the most dangerous men in Mexico. The walls were reinforced to withstand rocket-propelled grenades. The airspace above the prison was a no-fly zone. Cell signals were jammed to prevent communication with the outside world. Inside the prison, the floors were reinforced with steel grids to prevent digging. CCTV cameras covered every inch of the facility, except for the small blind spots in the showers and toilets for human rights compliance. It was in this hyper-secure environment that El Chapo began to plot his second great escape, almost immediately after arriving. The plan relied on the one thing El Chapo had in abundance, which was money. While he sat in his cell, his sons and associates on the outside went to work. They needed a location near the prison to start digging. Approximately 1 mile away from the prison walls sat a lonely patch of farmland. In the months following his capture, a stranger purchased the land. Locals noticed a small house being built on the property. It looked like a modest cinder-block storage shed or a small home. But the construction of the house was merely a cover for the massive excavation project happening beneath the foundation. The engineering required for the tunnel was sophisticated and precise. The builders needed to dig a tunnel that was nearly 5,000 feet long. They had to navigate underground knowing exactly where the prison walls were and the specific location of cell number 20. A deviation of just a few feet would have resulted in failure. It is widely believed that the cartel hired professional mining engineers for the job. They likely used GPS coordinates and perhaps even blueprints of the prison obtained through bribery. The sheer volume of earth that had to be removed was enormous. Residents in the area later reported seeing dump trucks moving to and from the property at all hours. They assumed it was part of a government water project or simply the construction of the house. The soil around the prison was hard and rocky, which made digging difficult, but also ensured the tunnel would hold its shape. The cartel crews worked day and night using heavy generators to power their tools. The noise of the drilling and digging should have been audible or at least detectable by seismic sensors. Yet the work continued without interruption for months. Inside the tunnel, the construction was state-of-the-art. The passage was about 5 feet 6 inches high, which was just tall enough for El Chapo to stand upright. It was roughly 2.5 feet wide. The walls were shored up with wood and ductwork to prevent collapse. A PVC pipe system ran the length of the tunnel to pump in fresh air. Electric lights were strung along the ceiling to illuminate the path. This was not a crude hole in the ground. It was an underground corridor built for speed and efficiency. The most remarkable feature of the tunnel was the transport system. The engineers installed a steel rail track that ran the entire length of the mile-long passage. Modified specifically for this track was a motorcycle. The bike was attached to a cart that could be used to haul out the dirt and rock during construction. On the night of the escape, this same motorcycle would serve as the getaway vehicle for the drug lord. It was a symbol of the immense resources the Sinaloa Cartel could mobilize. They had turned a prison break into an industrial operation. Back inside the prison, El Chapo behaved like a model prisoner to avoid suspicion. He complained about the cold and requested extra blankets. He read books and watched television on a small portable set. However, there were signs that something was amiss. Other inmates later reported hearing drilling sounds beneath the floors. Some said the noise was so loud they complained to the guards. The officials dismissed the noises as maintenance work on the prison water system. It is highly probable that bribery played a significant role in this willful ignorance. Corruption has always been the greatest tool of the cartels. It is estimated that El Chapo spent millions of dollars bribing prison officials and guards, and possibly even high-ranking politicians. For the tunnel to break through exactly under his shower drain, he needed to remain in that specific cell. Usually high-value prisoners are rotated between cells to prevent escape plans. El Chapo stayed in cell 20 for the duration of his incarceration. This fact alone suggests that the conspiracy reached deep into the prison administration. On the day of the escape, El Chapo seemed calm. He took his medication and ate his meals. As evening approached, the final breakthrough occurred. The tunnelers had reached directly under the shower floor. They used hydraulic jacks to push up the slab of concrete. The noise of the final breach was likely masked by the volume of the television in his cell. At 8:52 p.m., he changed his shoes and walked to the shower. He checked the drain area. The concrete block had been removed, leaving a square hole. He slipped inside, and the block was possibly replaced or left open. He dropped down into the vertical shaft that connected his cell to the main tunnel. A ladder led him down roughly 30 feet to the tunnel floor. Waiting for him was the motorcycle on the rails. He straddled the bike or sat in the cart attached to it. The engine roared to life in the confined space. The ventilation system ensured he did not suffocate from the exhaust fumes. He sped away from the prison, traveling under the fences and the guard towers and the open fields. The mile-long journey that would have taken 20 minutes to walk took only a few minutes on the bike. At the other end of the tunnel, inside the half-built house on the farmland, his accomplices were waiting. He climbed up the ladder from the depths and emerged into the cool night air. He stripped off his prison uniform and changed into civilian clothes. His men had a vehicle waiting. They drove him to a nearby airstrip in San Juan del Rio. A plane was fueled and ready for takeoff. Within hours of stepping into his prison shower, El Chapo was flying back to his stronghold in the mountains of Sinaloa. Back at the prison, the guards were just realizing the magnitude of their failure. When they finally entered the tunnel from the cell, they were stunned by what they found. The sheer length and sophistication of the passage was undeniable proof of a massive security breach. They followed the tunnel all the way to the exit in the house. There they found the construction equipment and the motorcycle and the large piles of dirt. The manhunt began immediately, but they were already too late. The bird had flown. The escape caused a political firestorm in Mexico. President Peña Nieto was on a state visit to France when the news broke. He called it an affront to the Mexican state. The humiliation was absolute. The government had paraded El Chapo in front of the cameras the year before claiming he was locked away forever. Now he was gone again. The United States government, which had requested his extradition, was furious. They had warned that Mexican prisons could not hold him. Trust between the two nations on security matters was severely damaged. A massive dragnet was launched to find the fugitive. Checkpoints were set up on highways across the country. Airports were locked down. The government released recent photos of El Chapo without his mustache showing his shaved head. A reward of nearly $4 million was offered for information leading to his capture. But in the Golden Triangle region of Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua, El Chapo was on home turf. The locals protected him. He moved between safe houses and mountain hideouts, protected by layers of armed guards. While on the run, El Chapo did not lay low. His ego led him to take risks. He wanted a movie made about his life. He communicated with actresses and producers. This desire for fame would eventually be his undoing. He reached out to Mexican actress Kate del Castillo, whom he admired. Through her, a meeting was arranged with American actor Sean Penn. In October 2015, Sean Penn traveled to the Mexican jungle to interview the fugitive for Rolling Stone magazine. The meeting was surreal, with the drug lord discussing his childhood and his business over tequila. Mexican intelligence agencies were tracking these communications. They monitored the movements of the actors and the intermediaries. The meeting with Sean Penn helped authorities narrow down his location. Although they did not capture him, immediately after the interview, the net was tightening. The Marines launched several raids in the mountains. In one instance, El Chapo narrowly escaped capture by fleeing through a ravine, injuring his leg in the process. He was forced to leave the mountains and seek refuge in the city. By January 2016, intelligence tracked him to a house in the coastal city of Los Mochis in Sinaloa. The authorities noticed a large order of tacos being delivered to the residence, which seemed suspicious for the reported occupants. They also identified an armored car leaving the property. In the early hours of January 8, the Mexican Navy Special Forces known as the Black Swan Unit launched a raid on the house. A fierce gun battle erupted. The cartel gunmen fought back with heavy automatic weapons and rocket launchers. As the bullets flew inside the house, El Chapo initiated another escape plan. He and his chief of security, known as El Cholo, Ivan, located a secret door behind a mirror in a bedroom. This door led to the city sewer system. While his men held off the Marines' El Chapo, and Ivan descended into the muck and darkness of the storm drains. They waded through the filth for over a mile, while the soldiers searched the house above. The Marines eventually found the tunnel entrance and followed them into the sewers. El Chapo and his associate emerged from a manhole in the middle of a busy street several blocks away. They carjacked a vehicle and tried to flee the city. However, the federal police were on high alert. They intercepted the stolen car on a highway outside Los Mochis. The officers arrested the two men. In a strange twist of fate, they were taken to a nearby motel called the Hotel due to wait for reinforcements because the officers feared a cartel rescue attempt. A photo leaked of El Chapo sitting on a dirty motel bed in a dirty undershirt, handcuffed and defeated. This time, the Mexican government took no chances. They immediately transferred him back to Altiplano prison, but with significantly increased security. Tanks guarded the perimeter. The floors were reinforced again. Guards were rotated constantly. But the stay was short. The legal process for extradition to the United States was expedited. In January 2017, on the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration, El Chapo was put on a plane and flown to New York. He would never set foot in Mexico again. The trial of El Chapo in Brooklyn was a media spectacle. The jury heard testimony about the inner workings of the cartel, including the gruesome violence and the immense profits. Former associates testified against him, detailing the bribes and the murders. The tunnel escape was a key piece of evidence showing his power and his disregard for the law. In February 2019, he was found guilty on all 10 counts. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. The judge also ordered him to forfeit over $12 billion. Today, Joaquin Guzman resides in the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. It is known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Prisoners there spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in soundproof cells made of poured concrete. There are no tunnels out of ADX. The facility is designed to break the human spirit. For a man who once commanded an army and moved billions of dollars, his world has shrunk to a 7 by 12-foot concrete box. The silence is absolute. The escape of El Chapo remains a subject of fascination and study. It exposed the deep rot of corruption within the Mexican penal system. It showed the lengths to which the cartels will go to protect their leaders. The tunnel itself was a marvel of illicit engineering that will likely never be replicated. It stands as a monument to the power of money and the ingenuity of the criminal mind. While El Chapo is now locked away, the legend of his mile-long tunnel continues to echo through the history of the drug war. The legacy of the escape is a reminder of the constant battle between law enforcement and organized crime. As technology improves for the police, so does it for the criminals. The tunnel at Altiplano was not just a hole in the ground, it was a symbol of a state within a state. It forced a reevaluation of maximum security protocols worldwide. It proved that walls and bars are only as strong as the people guarding them. And it left the world wondering if there is any prison truly capable of holding a man with unlimited resources. Ultimately, the story of El Chapo is a tragedy of wasted potential. The same mind that organized a logistics empire and engineered a mile-long tunnel could have been used for legitimate enterprise. Instead, it left a trail of blood and addiction across two nations. The tunnel is now filled with concrete sealed forever. But the mystery of exactly who helped him and how deep the conspiracy went may never be fully solved. In the dark world of the cartels, some secrets remain buried deeper than any tunnel.